Traders, how are you? With Marcello. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. This week we have a new, I would say a more consistent attack on the dollar. We have India landing on the moon, which makes it the fourth country to do so. And we also have a little bit of fear about incoming interest rates. Let's go ahead and get started. The Federal Reserve Chair, which is kind of like the boss of the Central Bank of the United States, called the Federal Reserve, stated that they need to proceed carefully with any further interest rate increases, but he did say that they're most likely going to happen due to the fact that inflation is persistently high. So remember that the economy in the United States, with the US being still the dominant economy in the world, basically runs on consumer spending. That basically means that you and I going out and spending money is literally what makes the world go round in the United States. Nearly 70% of the entire economy in the US is consumer spending. This is why the interest rates is so important, because we have a situation where the entire world, with the amount of debt that we have, has been over financialized. Ever since the crash in 2008 and 2009, interest rates have come down to the lowest in history. Not the last 10 years or the beginning of the United States. No, in recorded history. So that creates just a massive bubble effect. And now that they're raising the rates at such a aggressive clip, a lot of people can't afford what's anything anymore, right? Because everything basically runs on interest rates. Your houses, our cars, especially in the United States, we're very used to getting loans for absolutely everything. The US markets were mixed. The only one that was negative was the Dow. The S&P 500, NASDAQ, and Canada, all three went higher. Overseas market news, the European markets were mostly higher as well, with Istanbul, if you consider it a European country, kind of half is European, half is Asian, right? But Turkey went up 2.70%. Latin America was mostly mixed. Argentina continued to go up quite a bit after the libertarian Javier Milei won the primaries. They went up over 8%, biggest winner there. Africa and the Middle East was mixed. Looking at the numbers here, Egypt was the biggest winner there. And then in the far East, Asia and Australia and that whole area, we have Thailand being the biggest winner there at 2.70%. Bitcoin and crypto news, Logan Paul says that he's working on, quote, paying back all the investors after the crypto NFT project CryptoZoo reportedly was rug pulled. I'm sure you guys remember the huge collapse in the crypto market, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and all of the NFTs that somebody, would buy for $1 and then resell for $10 million, all practically went to zero. Bitcoin higher this week, up 0.37%. We finally had that breakout move. We talked about that a lot, right? Where the majority of the time, Bitcoin now kind of seems stagnant, doesn't really move that much, and it's in these consolidation phases and then just breaks out in one direction or the other. Bitcoin closed Saturday morning just over 26,032 to be exact. And in commodities, some food prices might actually be getting a lot higher. India, after announcing that they were going to start restricting the exports of rice, with them being 40% of the entire market of rice in the world, now they're expecting to ban mills from exporting sugar starting in the season beginning in October. This is the first time that they've halted shipments in 7 years. This is due to the lack of rains, and the price of sugar is already at multi-year highs. So a lot of people now are fearing that this is going to cause inflation to continue to go up, because even though the government is telling us that inflation is only 3 or 4%, I'm sure you haven't seen your food bill go up by just 3 or 4%, am I right? Brazil is set to overtake the United States as the world's largest corn exporter. They've had a better than expected harvest, in addition to fixing their infrastructure issues, since most of the corn is being exported through the north and the Amazon, the huge Amazon River. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the U.S. kind of seems to be losing their number one spot in absolutely everything. Have you guys been noticing, like little by little, it's just kind of eroding away that American empire? Friday, oil climbed to the first one week high as diesel prices soared. There was a fire At a refinery in Louisiana, U.S. crude went down 1.77% to 79.83, while Brent went down 0.37% to 84.48. And big week for precious metals, even though the dollar actually went up just a touch, depending on what currency you look at. Gold went up 1.33% to 19.15.80, while silver went up over 6% to $24.32. Financial and banking news, there was an interesting report that came out that a staggering 69% of working families are living paycheck to paycheck, one paycheck away from homelessness, and now they're carrying the largest debt load literally in history. And we have a situation, as I was mentioning to you a moment ago, about the over-financialization of the world. Federal debts, government debts are at record highs, state debts, city debts, consumer debts. So we have a situation where, here comes Conspiracy Marcello, I think they're doing it on purpose to cause the crash, the depression of our lifetime, for them to come out and say, oh, you want to go out and buy food? Come and take this digital currency. But you need to spend it in 5 minutes or it's going to expire. This week on Conspiracy Marcello. $2 trillion has been shifted away from New York and California by Wall Street companies. Not a surprise. The surging crime rates, high taxes, and the exorbitant housing costs in a lot of these people's republics. Chicago, or Illinois, I should say, being another one. A lot of them are migrating to the free states of Texas and Florida and other sun belts where living expenses are a lot cheaper and there's actually rule of law. In 1990, the New York state held 33% of all U.S. financial jobs, where last year it was only 17%. Now Miami, Brickell, basically is little New York, basically is what they call it. One thing that's really interesting that I'm sure you didn't know is that the second highest density area in the United States is Brickell, Miami. Brickell being the downtown area, essentially. The first one, obviously, is Times Square. Cuba, the great communist republic of Cuba, is taking steps towards putting a electronic banking and cashless society. They want to be able to have everyone use, I'm sure they're going to come out with their government coin too. The CBDC, the central bank digital currency, which I very affectionately call government coin. They're limiting withdrawals for businesses to just $20 or 5,000 Cuban pesos. One of the several measures that the government is trying to initiate to not coerce, because obviously the government would never coerce you to do anything, to encourage online payments and limiting of cash transactions. President of Brazil called on the BRICS nations to create a common currency to trade and invest between each other. BRICS being the economic group of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They had their huge meeting in South Africa over the last week. They agreed to let in other countries as well, which is Saudi Arabia, Iran, Ethiopia, Egypt, Argentina, and UAE, United Arab Emirates. And this is a big deal because the BRICS, especially with all of the new members, are going to create an economic bloc that's actually going to be bigger than our economic bloc, essentially, which is the G7. And most people don't realize that the majority of the US dollars that have been minted or created are actually overseas. So as all these countries stop using the dollar, right? Because initially, if you guys don't know kind of the dynamic of why the United States is the empire that it is because the United States made an agreement with Saudi Arabia, I was going to say it in Spanish, Arabia Saudita, in case you're interested, in order to essentially make everybody buy oil with dollars. That kind of became a custom. All of the other countries were selling it in dollars. I'm sure there were some other agreements as well. And now everybody, essentially, when they go to pay somebody, they just pay it with dollars. It's just the kind of the world standard. So if Russia needed to pay, let's say, South Africa, Russia would trade their rubles to dollars and then pay South Africa in dollars. See what I mean? So when that stops happening and the demand of the dollar goes down, all those dollars are going to come back home. Once all those dollars come back home, if we think about products for sale, what happens when there's a lot of one product? The price goes down. Well, a devaluation of the currency means a big problem with inflation. And we're probably going to end up somewhere along the lines of Argentina, where their inflation rate is at 118%. So you imagine, I don't know what things cost in the US anymore. Well, let's do the burger example that I always give you guys, right? 2020, I went to Five Guys, 2 people, 2 fries, 2 drinks, $20. Now I literally went about 6 months ago, 2023, 2 years later, $20 now just for me, just for one meal. So that's literally what, 100%, right? That went from $10 to 20, 100% in 2 years. So 50% a year. So imagine the price going up every year for that. So we passed 100% in 2 years. It's $20 now. Now next year, it'll be another 100%, meaning next year, instead of a burger costing $20, it'll be $40. Then the year after that, it would be $80, right? Can you imagine how those people are living? It's not going to be fun. The U.S. share of official Forex reserves, meaning a lot of countries that have their reserves in their central banks, are at a 20-year low of 58%. It's now at 47%. So it was at 58%. I think I said that wrong. 58% in Q4 of 2022, meaning the end of last year. And now it's only at 47%. But 90% of all Forex transactions are in dollars. So this is where the BRICS are trying to pay each other and do things together rather than not using the dollar. And it's going down little by little, but eventually it's just going to fall off a cliff. And then that's when the real problem is going to get started. U.S. mortgage applications fell to their lowest rate since 1995 as interest rates surge. The 30-year rate hit 7.23, which is the highest in 23 years. Average home buyer has to spend 43% of their household income to afford a home. And this is one thing I'm going to say to you guys that I heard somebody say, I can't remember who it was. If your girlfriend or your wife is spending too much of your money, that means that you're not making enough money. So don't worry about how much you're spending. Go out and make more, right? In November of 2019, the median new home price was $260,000 with a mortgage rate of 4%. Meaning that someone could buy a house, which is $60,000, and their payment would be $1,700 a month. Now the average home is $436,000. So it's about double, just under double, essentially. Let me do the math there because I think it's about 40% or so. So that price of a house has gone up. I'm doing the math here really quickly on my calculator. 67%. Wow. So the average cost of a new home cost 67% more, and the monthly mortgage rate now is $3,700. So before it would have cost you $1,700, and now it's $3,700, meaning that the monthly payment has gone up 117% in 4 years. This is why people can't afford to buy anything anymore. But don't forget, the interest rate is still at 3%. I mean, you guys got to start the side hustle. You got to start trading. You got to start selling your feed on OnlyFans. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. In political news, Trump was arrested and the mugshot was shared on social media, one of the most liked photos of all time. FEMA officials that are helping with the Maui fires are spending the night at a $1,000 a night luxury hotel while they're doing the recovery efforts. Meanwhile, the Hawaii residents get just $700 one-time payment. So there's the government for you. Atlanta College reinstates the mask mandates for students, employees, and campuses. Get ready for the next pandemic because it's an election year. In economic news, survey showed the German business activity contracted at the fastest pace in over 3 years in August. This is a really big piece of news because remember that Germany is the 4th largest economy in the world, the largest economy in Europe, and their economy is about just over 2/3 is manufacturing. So if they're contracting at the fastest pace in 3 years of 66% of their economy, that means that the 4th largest economy in the world isn't doing very well. Corporate news, Subway, the sandwich chain, sold itself to Roark Capital, which owns Dunkin' Donuts, Arby's, Buffalo Wild Wings, and many, many others for $9.6 billion. They also invested $200 million into the Cheesecake Factory so they wouldn't go bankrupt during the pandemic. NVIDIA, which is just crushing it over the last few months because of the launch of ChatGPT, went up almost 14% at one point this week. after settling back down. This obviously has to do with the whole demand with the chips for the AI, which they absolutely dominate. Their shares are up almost 3 times their value this year, adding more than $700 billion to the company's market value. The revenue beat quite a bit what the industry was expecting, and their fiscal quarter 3, they're up 170% compared to a year ago. So they're just absolutely crushing it. Tesla also went up over 7% after they had quite a few weeks of really bad results. This has to do with the fact of the news that the Cybertruck is coming out. There was a lot of pictures and things that they started to make them finally and giving them to people. And also the deal that they started launching with a lot of the different car companies with their charging stations. They also dropped prices in China. So people are expecting, even though margins are going to be lower, a lot more profit and revenue. Stock is up over 87% in 2023, but it remains down year over year, 22%. And Dollar Tree, which is the famous dollar chain, which supposedly sells everything for $1, which I imagine now it's about $2 or $3. They went down quite a bit after they issued a lower than expected guidance. The retailer said that customers now are spending just on food and necessities. So remember the shift in the consumers. Remember, the consumer in the United States is 70%. It's almost 70% of the economy. And now we had a situation, I would say, just after the pandemic, people started shopping a lot more at dollar stores, right? There was kind of a shift in the dynamic where people weren't going out to Walmart and all the other places because dollar stores were cheaper. Now you can see that they're even expecting lower sales because now people aren't spending as much money anymore because they don't have any more money, right? So consumers are in trouble. In technology, Russia's first moon mission in 47 years failed. Their Luna 25 spacecraft spun out of control and crashed on the moon. Meanwhile, India just became a space power. They're now the 4th country in history to reach the moon, well, in our history, after the United States, Russia, and China. So that's going to be great for their economy as well. In investment news, foreign companies leaving Russia are being forced to take a 50% discount after the Russian government choosing the company that provides the valuation of the companies that are leaving. And if you guys didn't hear about the leader of the Wagner Group, I'm going to butcher his name, unfortunately, Prigozhin or something like that. He had an accident on a private jet. I'm sure Putin didn't have anything to do with that. And in international events, the first hurricane to reach California in 84 years, Hurricane Hillary, caused flash flooding with landslides and mudslides all along the southeast as well. 17 million Americans were under flood and high wind advisories. And we have fires all over the world. Turkey, Greece, I'm sure they don't report these in the mainstream media. If you guys are watching mainstream media, I don't know why you guys are watching it. But anyway, Greece, Turkey, Argentina, obviously we had the situation in Maui, Canada, literally the entire world is on fire. And we even have flooding everywhere as well. Saudi Arabia, which is a desert, has a problem with flooding now. So just remember, the preppers were right.